Ready, set,
Time now for Football Debate Central Radio. And here are your hosts, Vincent Frank and Ryan Riddle.
And welcome to a new episode of Football Debate Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. Today we're going to be joined by Orlando Alzugaray talking about the Miami Dolphins and what's going on with the team that's actually in the AFC playoff race right now. Then we're going to be talking to my boy Kwame-Fisher Jones about the Philadelphia Eagles and, hey, battling for first place in the NFC East and whether that's going to come down to Week 17. And, yeah, so good stuff coming on here on their show, and we'll be right back.
Hey everyone, check out TomahawkShades.com and get your lethally stylish pair of sunglasses. Great quality for a great price. Shades on, problems gone. TomahawkShades.com.
And welcome back to Football Debate Central on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. We are now joined by Orlando Alzugaray, who's the host of the Big O Show on 6:40 a.m. in Florida. Hey Orlando, how you doing, man?
How's it going, fellas?
Doing good, man. Crazy day of football on Sunday, right?
I know, man. It was definitely wacky, and in Dolphin land, we're just happy to walk away with a victory against those Steelers. So that was good. It was nice to see them get over that 500 mark and actually keep their name in the playoff race.
Orlando, would you say you're surprised a little bit by them being able to go into the cold weather environment, being from Miami, of course, the team themselves?
No, not really.
No,
not really, because the Steelers are nothing. They're a joke of a team. They're mediocre, like the Dolphins are, like every other team, like Baltimore, like all these teams that are battling for that last playoff spot. It's really not a good NFL. I mean, listen. I tell Dolphins this: enjoy the win. It's great. It's a hell of a lot better than losing, and I'm glad that they're in the playoff race. But don't fill yourself with all this. Don't become delusional and saying, okay, well, they've arrived and they're a heck of a team. Put it this way. The Jets, who are playing with the worst quarterback in the NFL, have one less victory than the Dolphins. And the Jets have two more impressive wins on their resume than the Dolphins do. They beat the Saints and they beat the Patriots. The Dolphins' best wins are the Colts and the Bengals. My point is, this is a really bad NFL right now. And what we have to really look at realistically is that the Dolphins are a mediocre team. They're really not going anywhere. But this NFL is so bad that all these teams that are battling for that last playoff spot, they just are what they are. They're middling teams. And our Dolphins happen to be one of them. Hey, let's enjoy the victory. But big picture, they still need to blow this whole thing up because Jeff Ireland's not the answer.
Wow. So, Orlando, can you be honest with us and stop sugarcoating things?
Yeah, no, you know me. I just pussyfoot around all the time, so I'm not one of those guys that has much of an opinion. But listen, I've seen this story over and over and over again, and in the second week of the season, when I looked at this league, it was like I could tell that this was going to be a very top. It reminds me a lot of the NBA, where the NBA is so predictable at the beginning of the season. You can point at 4 or 5 teams, and that's it. They're the only teams that have a shot at the title. That kind of reminds me this season for the NFL, there's only a few teams, and then the rest of them, it's like 18 or 22 teams are like stuck in the same spot.
A lot of parity.
Beat each other any week. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. So wait, how are the Dolphins doing as far as your expectations go? Are they exceeding or have they gone?
I picked them at 7-9, so they're right around there. I think they'll end up winning 9 games, but I didn't think that this NFL would be this bad. So they're benefiting from it. It reminds me a lot of the 11-5 season, like 5 years ago, when we took the whole league by storm down here, and we were all like freaking out, going, "Wow, the Wildcat!" and all this stuff, and everything fell into place for the Dolphin fans. And they played a really crappy schedule, and throughout that schedule, they like ran into the Bills in Toronto. They would play a team, and they would have their starting quarterback out, and everything like fell into place. And they won 11-5, and we were kind of feeling good about ourselves down here. But we really didn't see the reality that it wasn't a great team. It was just a great situation they fell into. Tom Brady gets injured, all that stuff, and it really worked out for him. I think this is kind of the same thing. This isn't really a good team. It's just taking advantage of a really bad situation, and they happen to suck a little less than the other teams that are battling for that spot.
Orlando, you talked about Jeff Ireland and how it needs to be blown up. We had on Sage Rosenfels, who was on the Dolphins for a few weeks, a couple years back. He brought up the fact that when he went into the locker room the first time, he got a feeling within 5 minutes of how the players felt about Ireland, and he said that he was the worst front office executive that he ever worked with. Are you hearing that from the Dolphin players, and what are you hearing in South Beach about Jeff Ireland and his relationship with the players?
I've heard that for years. Players hate, listen to the word, hate Jeff Ireland, okay? Most guys down in that locker room can't stand the guy after they end up having an experience. He has very poor people skills. That's just the way it is. It's always been like that. Listen, when you sit there and you ask a player if his mom's a whore, you obviously have no tact whatsoever. You know what I mean? In fact, what he should have been asking Des Bryant is, not and indirectly, okay, because this is the part that I was impressed with Des Bryant. This is the part that I'm impressed with Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade grew up with a mom who's a crack addict. And while he's 7 or 9 or 11 years old, he's at his doorstep at 2 a.m, waiting for his mom, praying for his mom to come back from some crack binge. He never gave in to the drugs, never gave in to the violence, never got arrested,
right.
And look where he's at now. Well, Des Bryant never got arrested, never got into drugs, never got into guns, fighting, gangs, none of that. His dad's a pimp, his mom's a whore. If there's a question that Jeff Ireland should have asked that day is, Des, with the environment you had around you, how did you not give in to that? Because all we ever made of is that he was late to some practices at Oklahoma State and things like that, and that he wore his pants halfway down in a mall. I mean, he's really never gotten in any serious trouble ever in his life, and look at the environment he had. No, Jeff Ireland looks at it the other way. Jeff has very poor people skills, and players, everybody that's dealt with him, agents that have dealt with him, they don't enjoy dealing with Jeff Ireland. That is just a fact of life.
You bring up an excellent point about the Des Bryant thing. Couldn't agree with you more. As far as Ireland's decision-making goes, do you think he got it wrong with the Philbin hire? Or do you see like
that's not his hire? That's not his hire. We can't blame him for that. That's all the owner wanted to make a change. There's no way that Jeff Ireland hires him because he's. Do
you like Philbin as a head coach, or do you think
not at all?
So blow up everything, get rid of Philbin as well?
I'll give you a great example here. Philbin lost me having 2 weeks to prepare for Buffalo, and then after you beat Cincinnati, you have 11 days to prepare for Tampa Bay. You had 25 days to prepare for 2 of the worst teams in the NFL, and you couldn't beat them. And you came in flat in those games on top of all of that. Philbin's not the guy. He's not the answer. These guys, listen, and I don't want to hear this thing, but they're playing hard. They're playing hard because the film doesn't lie. That's their resume. They played hard for Dave Wanstead all the way to the end. They were playing, when Sperano went 0-7, they turned around and played hard. Doesn't make Sperano a good coach, doesn't make Wanstead a good coach, and doesn't make Philbin a good coach. Players play hard because their resume is the film. You know, it's kind of, I laugh at fans when they say 2 years ago, suck for luck. You can't do that. You can't go out and tell players to go lose because that's on their resume. All 53 players aren't going to be brought back by a team next year. No, there's going to be free agents, and those free agents, their resume is that film. So if they see you quitting and you're, the mantra was suck for luck. So you're a quitter. No, I don't want you on my team. Not a lot of people are going to want Jonathan Martin on their team. Why? Because he's a quitter.
It's sounding like you like the players, though. Blow up.
Yeah, I do like some. Yes, I think if the Dolphins get the right GM and the right coach, I think you have enough of a foundation here that you can turn things around and become a perennial playoff team within 2 years. Remember, guys, 6 years in now, you now need, again, 4 offensive linemen, 2 guards and 2 tackles, okay? And I think the last time we came on, you guys started asking me about players, and I told you we don't know what system yet, right? Well, if you stay with a zone blocking scheme, you need to find yourself 2 athletic guards. Because, see, these guys, second year in, Philbin, former offensive line guy, here's another reason why I don't like him. Okay, so you want to run a zone blocking scheme, but you have unathletic guards. How the hell does that make any sense? No wonder you can't run screens. Yeah, exactly. So if you're going to have a zone blocking scheme, then you need to have the proper guards. And even Incognito, who's a solid guard, but he's not a zone blocking guard. Neither is John Jerry. John Jerry's mediocre as it is on any system, but he doesn't fit a zone blocking system.
No, Incognito's a downhill blocker. He's hit him in the face.
He's a one-on-one guy. He's a mauler is
Yeah.
what he is. But he's not a zone blocking guy because he doesn't have that athleticism. He's a stiff guy. He can play in a phone booth. He can't play in space. That's not who he is. Notice that whenever they have to pull, who's the guy pulling? Mike Pouncey. Why? Because Mike is the only guy that's an absolute athlete out there. And so that's what you need in a zone blocking scheme. They need more athletes on this line. So now you go into the offseason. I tweeted this this morning at Big O Show for those of you that want to follow me. If you can handle the Dolphin Truth, by the way, follow me at Big O Show and on Facebook page also Big O Show. At the end of the year, you've got one franchise tag, yet you've got three guys you really need to retain. Starks, Soliai, and Grimes. You can only tag one, so you're going to lose. And then you still have to fill out 4 offensive line spots because you need 2 guards and 2 tackles. Hell, you might bring back McKinney just because of desperation, but he's not the guy you build on for the future. He's just a Band-Aid for a real big problem that you have. So it's just a vicious cycle that we're in. But if you get the right general manager and the right coaches in place, I think you can build around the guys you have, like Cam, like Grimes, all the guys that you do have on this team that can play football, that can get it done for you. I think you just need the right leadership on this team, and you can turn it around like they did in Seattle and San Francisco within a couple of years.
And Ryan Tannehill. I loved what I saw from him last year. It really surprised me. I thought he was going to be a developmental quarterback. He shouldn't have started immediately. He surprised me last year. Do you think that he has taken the next step this year, or is he meddling to where he was last year?
He's still about the same thing as last year. Look at the throws he underthrew yesterday. Yeah. Although I will say the one drive where he hits Clay downfield was a beautiful throw. Finally, he led a wide receiver downfield, which was beautiful. And then the throw he throws to Hartline. I know Hartline made a great catch, but ball placement is the most important thing for quarterbacks. He put it where only Hartline could catch it, and the DB had no shot whatsoever. I need to see playmaking ability with his arm like I did on that drive more often. That's when I say Ryan turns the corner. But yesterday, he underthrew deep balls. He had those 2 out patterns before the half that he just threw 2 horrible passes on second and third downs. He threw the pick 6, which was a horrible pick 6. He's still where he's at. I will say this. I like the fact that the last 3 weeks, the kid is starting to run more. I don't want the read option because I think every quarterback that runs that eventually gets injured. But I do want what I've seen from Ryan the last 3 weeks that, hey, dude, there's 5, 10, 15 yards in front of you. Take it, slide, run out of bounds. Don't take any hits, but keep the chains moving. I like that a lot. That it's taken him almost 2 years. Another reason why you got to fire Sherman to actually implement that. But that's something that I like out of Ryan that he is doing. But as a passer with his arm, he's still not there yet. He's still too inaccurate for my liking.
You bring up as a passer. With his legs, he doesn't use them. I'm so surprised that this former wide receiver uses his legs as little as he does with a broken down offensive line. It's amazing. If he were to utilize his athleticism a little more, I think he'd be more successful. But let me ask you this, Orlando.
Whose fault is that? And whose fault is that? That's Sherman's
fault.
That's
got to be a Philbin issue there. Do you believe do you believe in your delicate opinion that Tannehill is destined to be a mid-round starter in terms of ceiling?
Right now, he looks to me like a middling quarterback. I call him an athletic game manager, is what I call him, because the kid can move around. The kid's got a terrific arm. He doesn't know where the ball's going all the time, but he does have he has a lot of ability. But guys, we've seen that over and over again. I'm 47. I've seen lots of quarterbacks with all kinds of great ability. It doesn't make you a great quarterback, and that's what I need from him. I need better instincts from him. And like I said, I need playmaking ability from his arm. If he's going to be another Alex Smith, then that's not good enough. If he's going to be Andy Dalton, that's not good enough. I'm sorry. In this league, you're going to win with elite quarterbacks. If not, you're going to need one of those 2001, 2003 defenses that Baltimore and the Bucs had. And I'm sorry, you're asking that for, that's once in a lifetime. We had ours. Remember they were called the no-name defense back in the 70s? We had ours. Our turn has come and gone with that great defense. That's why Bob Greasy had to pass the ball 7 times, because he had a great defense and running game. We had our opportunity. The Bucs had one of those. The Ravens had one of those. That's once in a lifetime type of thing. And we need a superstar quarterback here, and I'm not sure that Tannehill's that guy yet.
I can't disagree with you.
In Orlando, moving forward this season, I know we're looking more to the future, but as you indicated, the Dolphins are right in the playoff race.
Yeah.
Who do you think is the fourth best team in the AFC? I think we could probably all make an agreement in that the Broncos, the Patriots, and Chiefs are probably sit above everybody else. Outside of those three teams, what team do you think stands out as the fourth best team in the conference?
In the conference, let me look at it.
We got the Bengals. We got the Ravens. We have your Dolphins, which we know you love. You could throw in the Chargers there. Who do you think are the next two teams after? And we have the Colts.
I'm gonna go. It's got to be the Colts for me, or Cincinnati. One of the two I've got to go with. And it's funny because Miami's beaten both of them. But yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll go with the Colts only because I trust Andrew Luck more than any of the other guys. And I know Andrew's working with less than Cincinnati and much less than Miami. Because really, think about it. Andrew has a worse wide receiving core than the Dolphins do. His line is the worst, by the way. Everybody talks, I don't know if you guys know this, but before this week, okay, the two most pressured quarterbacks in the NFL the last 2 years, Andrew Luck is number one with a bullet, 344 times. Russell Wilson is number two at 286. Matt Ryan is number three at 273. Tannehill, as bad as his line is nowhere to be found. So Luck has won 8 games with a lesser defense, because Miami's defense is way better than Indianapolis's, and his offense is lesser than Miami's also, except He's just a much better quarterback. So I'm going to go with Indianapolis. If Geno Atkins was healthy for the Bengals to solidify the middle of that line, I might lean to the Bengals. But I'm not a big Dalton guy. I think Dalton is no more than a game manager. You're not really winning anything special with Dalton because he isn't special whatsoever. So I'll lean slightly to Indianapolis. But again, I told you guys, this is a very mediocre NFL this year.
I would shy away from the Colts if I'm making that prediction because they're the only team with a winning record with a negative point ratio, -3. And I'm going to give props to the Super Bowl champions, the Baltimore Ravens, and I believe that and the Cincinnati Bengals. I believe the Bengals and the Ravens are the next two best teams in this conference.
The Ravens
I think in the end we're splitting hairs here. You know, neither one of the three are gonna make an impact against Denver or Kansas City or New England anyway.
I don't know. I'm going to actually go out on a limb here. If Andy Dalton has the ability to be consistent, I think that they can do some damage in the playoffs. They at least have a chance to be competitive.
Keyword.
But I'm asking. I could be asking a lot with a
What was the key word in that statement? What was the key word in that statement? If right?
Consistent. Right.
If I had wheels, that'd be a bicycle. You know what I mean? Come on, we could play this if game every year with the Dolphins. If they beat, Tampa, and if they beat Buffalo, hell, for sure the Dolphins are in the playoffs. There's no question now. You're not even in doubt now. You're challenging New England for the division race right now if you win some of the games. And we play this game every single year. Dalton is Dalton, man. I don't think there's anything special about the guy, to be honest with you.
No, I don't either. I was not a fan of his coming out of TCU. Still not a fan of his. Listen, Orlando, I had Miami winning the division over New England in August. Obviously, that didn't work out. I had the Bengals winning the AFC back in August. So we never know with that conference because, like you said, it's top heavy, and then it's just parity everywhere else.
And the Geno Atkins injury has been brutal to Cincinnati because that guy's such a force in the middle. He was shutting down that run, and they've become more susceptible to the run, and they're just not as good a defense now without him there. So that's been a real big loss for them. But again, guys, you need an elite quarterback in this league to win nowadays because all the rules favor them, not the defense. And your guy has to be deadly accurate, and that's something that Andy Dalton has problems with. He has arm strength issues and accuracy at times that's, and especially in the bad weather, that really sets him back quite a bit.
Orlando, we really do appreciate you coming on. Do you want to tell our listeners where they can find you again on Twitterverse and on the AM dial in Miami?
Sure, you can follow us on Twitter at Big O Show. I'm pretty interactive there. I answer a lot of questions there on Twitter and on Facebook. Also, you can like our Facebook page, Big Space O Space Show. You can find it, and you can download. We have a free app, 640 Sports. You can search for it on your Android or iPhone market. and it's like a red, black, and white logo, and you can listen to us 3 to 7 every afternoon. And TuneIn Radio is another app. If you want to tune in there, you can follow us there and listen to us anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world that you have an internet signal. If you're a Dolphin fan, our show talks Dolphins 24/7, 365 days a year. Well, not 24/7, but you know what I mean. Every day of the year, pretty much, that we're on. We're talking 12 months of the year. And we're the only radio show in the country, by the way, that goes every year to the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine, and the NFL Combine. So we talk a lot of draft. We talk a lot about what the Dolphins will do in the offseason. So if you're a football nut, if you're a Dolphin nut, you'll love our show, although you may not like my brutal honesty about our Dolphins. That's the one thing. I love them, but I'm going to say when they're not that good, I'm going to say it. And sadly, yeah, they're 7-6, but they're really not that good.
Yeah.
All right,
and that's
fellas?
what people want. And that's what people want, Orlando. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get you back on in the offseason.
Some. I have a label for some that can't handle it. I call them the blind-ass fans. I love them, but they're so, they're emotional cripples that they just can't handle the truth sometimes. So, trust me, 23 years doing this, some folks can handle the honesty. Most of them appreciate it, but there's always that fanatical group that they want to convince themselves that they're going to win 11, 12 games every year, and that's, sadly, it's not the reality, man.
Hi, this is Exhibit. You're listening to one of my favorite shows on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. Proudly sponsored by my Bonita Platinum and myself, X to the Z Exhibit. Bonita Tequila, the world's only 5 times distilled tequila. Visit BonitaSpirits.com to find it in your local area or ask for it by name.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central Radio Network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
And welcome back to Football Debate Central on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. We're now joined by Kwame-Fisher Jones, old pal of mine, host of Kwame. Your show's on 7 to 8 a.m. on 97.5 The Fan in Philadelphia. Kwame, how you doing, man?
I am fantastic. I got to make sure I give my co-host a little love to Matt Lombardo as well. We do the show together. But I'm fantastic, fellas. How are you guys?
Doing good. I can't speak for Ryan. He might not be doing too well in Southern California, but I'm doing well up here in Northern California.
And I'm doing good. I'm excited to have you on, and I was still hungover from a great weekend of football, actually.
I got to ask you real quick. You're in Southern California. I started out in the LA area. I am a closet USC fan. I do not like the hire of Sarkisian. I don't like it at all. It feels like it's Lane Kiffin all over again. I want to get that out there. I know that's not why you had me on, but I just got to get that off my chest. They should have went Ken Norton Jr. I think he would be a much better coach. Sarkisian is just Lane Kiffin, and I don't know what Hayden's trying to do with USC, but it looks like bad days are going to continue there. Just had to get that out there, guys. Sorry.
No, yeah, and I'm just going to leave it at this. I won't disagree with you.
I only disagree with you being a USC fan, but we'll go beyond that right now.
Closet USC fan. Pete Carroll's a good dude, man. I know you 49er fans don't like him, but yeah, he's a good dude.
I like Pete Carroll. I think he's grown on me. I think he's a good coach.
Let me tell you something. He's a really, really good dude, and he's taking a lot of shots for guys for things that he knew word on the street is that he knew, but he wasn't gonna run and tell on anybody, and he took a lot of shots for guys. And karma has no expiration date, and it's no stranger that he took a guy like Marshawn Lynch and is having a lot of success in Seattle with guys that may not have been top on everybody's character list because he's willing to take a chance on some guys that he knows personally, and he's a good dude, man. So let's get going though.
All right, my first thing here is Riley Cooper. We had you on.
Wait, why don't we just play the clip?
Let's play the clip first. Let's play the clip before we go into this further, Kwame.
Translating into losses on Sundays.
Well, you're implementing a defense where half the guys run a 4-3, the other half runs a 3-4. We don't have any cornerbacks. We have Kerry Williams who participates sporadically in the defensive secondary. We have two safeties who struggle to stay healthy. And you run into an offense. Even on a good day, Riley Cooper is our fourth receiver at best. He's now our starter. It's not only is it going to translate into losses, it lets you know not to expect anyone.
Hey, tell us how you really feel, Kwame. This is prior to the start of the regular season. Again, this is Kwame's second time on the show. Obviously, at 8-5, the Eagles have proven you wrong a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's been difficult, and as you know, I'm an Eagles fan, so I look at things from a fanatical point of view. You want to be excited, but as a pundit, as an analyst, smoke and mirrors when you see it. And it's funny, I get a lot of grief from people because the Eagles had a lot of success, and I'm fine with that. It's exciting to me to interact with people, but when the smoke clear and the horses leave the barn and it's all said and done, this Eagles team is not going to have that sustainable success. It looks great right now. I picked them to lose against the Detroit Lions, and, they pulled that game out. It's fantastic for the fans, and you don't want to say anything negative. But you just got that feeling in your gut like you're going to get kicked in the man parts. It's coming. And it's coming. You want to ignore it. You want to ignore the history. You want to ignore the past with everything. That's fine. But at some point it's going to be midnight for this team. And I refuse to back off of that. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what the scoreboard says. If they win every game at the end of the season and win the Super Bowl, then I'll say, I was wrong. But let's look back a little bit here. Let's look back to Michael Vick's first year with the Eagles when they went on that miraculous run, and then they lost 3 straight end of the year. Let's go a year before that when they won 5 straight. The last time they won 5 straight, Donovan McNabb was their quarterback. They lost 2 games to the Cowboys. They ran McNabb out of town. I can go Detmer when they won 4 straight with Detmer and then lost in the playoffs to the 49ers, or Rodney Peete when they scored almost 60 points against the Detroit Lions. We've been here before as Eagles fans. The problem is I'm not a fan. The problem is now I'm an analyst, a pundit, and I have to be honest about my true assessment. And if you're going to tell me that the Philadelphia Eagles, with number 14 at wide receiver, is going to somehow morph into a Super Bowl contender consistently and defeat teams who don't fumble the ball 7 times, who don't have Carson Lily-Liver at quarterback, who don't have RG3 and half a team that quits on him. They're going to line up and play real teams in the playoffs, teams that are studying their game field, defensive coordinators who are looking at them and saying, we know what he's going to do, what he doesn't want to do, what he likes to do. They ran the same play, the second half, the same running play that LaShawn McCoy, exposed the Detroit Lions and had success against. And part of that is, whoop-de-doo, LaShawn McCoy set up a great day. But you're going to run the same play and an entire same running play. They tilted the line a little bit to the left side, to the right side. Sometimes they brought the tight end down the down block. Sometimes they had him fake like he was going out for that. But the premise, they double team the tackles every play. The blocking assignments were the same. You're going to tell me the San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks, and the Carolina Panthers aren't going to stop them? Like, are you serious?
But you do have to give them some credit. You got to give them some credit here at having the amount of success that they have had, for whatever that's worth. And how much of that would you say is Chip Kelly?
I would say a lot of it has to do. Well, it's 2 principles here. I want to give you're 100% right, and I'm glad you asked me that question, because I do want to give them credit, and it's tough right now to be critical of anything that they do. But I do want to give some credit to Chip Kelly, but I want to give more credit to LaShawn McCoy and Deshaun Jackson. They're the only tandem in the NFL right now, or going into last week's game, to have a 1,000-yard receiver and a 1,000-yard rusher. And the show that LaShawn McCoy put on yesterday was amazing. He it was hat-on-hat football. And in those conditions, he made that safety miss every time. He made the safety look like a Pop Warner safety and not an NFL safety. And Dillmas was a pretty good safety when healthy. So, you want to give them credit, but it's kind of like you go to a car dealership. You see a Mercedes, and you go to like a buy here, pay here place. And it's like, why is this brand new Mercedes, or why is this fantastic Mercedes at this buy here, pay here place? And it looks great on the outside, and you drive it for a few miles, and it's like, yeah, I'm stunting, I'm doing my thing. And then eventually what happens? You feel that wheel start to shake. You feel that steering wheel start to shake. You see smoke come out of the car. And that's what I'm feeling like. So you want to give him credit. You want to say Kelly's doing a fantastic job. But you just know this thing is not going to end well. And, I get ripped.
I hear you. And I think the screws are I think the screws are loose on the I think the screws are loose on the defensive side of the ball here, considering that if they have a weakness to point to, it has to be defensively. they're not a playoff caliber team on that side of the ball, in my opinion. And they have gotten better. They've improved over the year, but they're not where they need to be to really be a contender in the postseason, in my opinion. And that's if the ship breaks down or sinks, it's going to be on that end more than anything else. Just how I see it.
Well, defensively, the scheme they've given a lot of credit to Bill Davis. And on paper, it looks like Bill Davis has done some things. They've held opponents under 8 points, or they've had an 8-game streak where they haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher. Their last rusher was actually in the Yay area when they played against the Raiders. The players have played well. I'm still not a buyer of the scheme. Like I said, it's tough to be critical right now. It's extremely tough to be critical because they have had success. But, I still don't believe in our safeties. Kerry Williams has played well. Bradley Fletcher has played exceptionally well. Fletcher Cox has played well. I want to give some love to Benny Logan. D'Amico Ryans. Kendricks has played well. They've had those certain players have played well. Trent Cole had a rebirth. But it's just, you've been around Andy Reid and you saw the way he built this thing. Dick Vermeil, you saw the way they built this thing. And right now the city's abuzz, and that's what happens in Philly, South Jersey, Middlesex. That's why Philly fans get a bad rep, and they shouldn't because they're just as passionate as any other fan base. Problem is they don't have the trophies that other fan bases have. But you get excited, when a team exceeds your expectations.
Right.
But you have to take a step back, look at it, and that's something a fanatic is not going to do. But as a pundit, I can't come out and say, oh, wow, they shot my expectations and sky's the limit for this team. Because I know it's not. Nick Foles was a guy that, my co-host he's been screaming, clamoring for.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about. Kwame. Do you believe in Nick Foles moving forward? I haven't gotten an opinion from you on this.
Well, I think Nick Foles, after 7 touchdowns, has earned the right to be the starter next season. And in life, you don't get things you deserve. You get things that you've earned. He's done everything that's been asked of him. But a part of that is also the fact that I don't like any of the quarterbacks coming out this year. I wasn't a Mariota fan, and Vincent, you know this. I don't go hard on college players. I don't critique college players until they become pros. But I was not a fan of Mariota. The only quarterback I really was intrigued by was Boyd. I'm not Bridgewater. So why not give Foles a chance to come back next season? Give him a full off season as a starter, and then if he fails, you still win because you get a draft that has Winston and Huntley sitting right there. Two franchise quarterbacks.
What do you predict Foles' career will be like? Is this bubble going to burst? Or is he the next great young quarterback?
Well, if you're going to pull a training day and put me in the middle of the intersection here, I'm going to say no one knows. And I know that's a crappy answer, but let me say why. Let me explain why.
Is he all that jelly and no toast, Kwame?
He's tough to get a handle on, because here's why. Let me explain why. Let me give real quick.
We have to remember the Cowboys game, by the way, where he looked very, very...
But that's why I don't know. That's why you don't know.
Right.
Because you learn about a man when they struggle. You learn about a man when he's at his worst, that he's at his weakest moment. And if he can come back from that and still give you a top performance, that's why I say he's earned it for next season. Because he had no reason to come back and give it to you. I'll do you one favor. I'll do you one better. In Arizona, for the 3 years he was a starter at Arizona, each year they got worse. They went from 8 wins to 7 wins to 6 wins. But on the 6-win team, he threw for over 4,000 yards. So it's like the team didn't win, but Foles put up outstanding numbers. You look at what Foles has done so far, the Eagles are horrid on third down. It was something like 3 and 15 last night or yesterday. Week before that, there was something like 4 for 15. He's only had 2 games against the Packers and I want to say the Giants where he was at least 50% on third down. Now, what happens is he's putting up some fantastic numbers. They're making big plays. So if you want to, like I said, if you're going to be an Alonzo and I got to make a call, I'm going to say he will probably be a guy like a Gus Frerotte or a Scott Mitchell who will put up numbers, maybe even a Matt Castle, but never be able to sustain it. It'll always be injuries. It'll always be the ham, no burger philosophy.
I know exactly what you're saying, because one of the most telling things that we have to consider here is that this offseason, Andy Reid, who knows him very well and knows what he's capable of, did not make a move to trade to get and bring him over to the Chiefs, and instead opted for Alex Smith. So we already know
about Alex Smith like he sucks.
The game manager, Alex Smith, Yeah.
So
it puts something into perspective here. I mean, and not to say that Andy Reid knows 100% what Foles is capable of, but at least it tells him that he's not enamored with him, and that means something.
Hey, Kwame, you bring up a good point with padding the stats and throwing for 4,000 yards and not winning. One of the biggest fantasy quarterbacks this season thus far is Robert Griffin III. If you look at his statistics, he's on pace for about 5,000 yards. No one can in their right mind say that RG3 has been a good quarterback this year.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the scary thing. That's the scary thing about this thing, man. You can't run a guy out of town who's putting up numbers. But if he's not winning, his predecessor, people forget about this. His predecessor, and you guys know, I'm no Michael Vick. Like, I'm not a Michael Vick fan, apologist, anything. I didn't want them to bring him back. But Vic put up some outstanding numbers for this team for the first 4 seasons of the game. He had a lights-out game against San Diego, but they lost. And when you're losing, no one wants to hear your argument, and when you're winning, no one wants to listen to you. So it's like with Foles, yesterday he had an interception. Deshaun Jackson makes an unbelievable catch, and I can't emphasize that enough. With Deshaun Jackson, because he was a guy that a lot of people don't know this, but he was demoted. When Chip Kelly came in, he demoted him. He wasn't on the first team. And he worked his way up from there to being the third receiver in Eagles history to have 3,000-yard seasons. This team's been around for almost 70 years, and Deshaun Jackson's the only the third wide receiver in their history to do that. So, Foles has got some great weapons, man. He's got some guns, you know what I mean? And he's hitting his mark. But eventually, like I said, he is going to have to be the reason why a team wins. It's not going to be the 8 feet of snow or the turnovers or, you know what I mean, or a defense not making plays or, a team not. He is going to have to do it. And then and only then will the Eagles fans know what they have. And I, for one, believe that they have a guy who has earned the right to go into next season and pretty much show why he was a third-round pick. The history. Just another quick number. I'm not going to throw a lot of numbers at you, but when you're wrong, you have to go back and reflect why you appear that you're wrong. You got to go back and do your due diligence, and which makes me more adamant about what I said. In the last 10 years, there's only been one quarterback who was selected outside of the second round to win a Super Bowl, and that was Tom Brady, and that was exactly 10 years ago. And people forget Brady won. Brady was like 5-1 in games against top 10 teams. That's not Nick Foles' pedigree. So think about that now. The last 10 years, modern-day NFL, we'd say 10 years, there's only been one quarterback selected outside of the second round. Drew Brees was in the second round. Everybody else was a first-round pick to win a Super Bowl. So you're going to tell me Nick Foles is of that elk? I don't think so.
Well, let me ask you this. Week 17, Philadelphia goes into Dallas. Division might be on the line. Who do you trust more, Tony Romo or Nick Foles?
Who do you trust?
Man, I don't trust Tony Romo at all. Yeah, it's like, do you want to win a game or you want to go home? I don't trust Romo at all, and he is a cowgirl, so I gotta ride with the birds here. But it's an interesting question. And it's interesting because if you remember, a few years ago, Tony Romo was Nick Foles. He could do no wrong. The Cowboys are riding sky high. Then he goes in Seattle and gets the Butterfingers, and it's all been downhill from him ever since once December hits. But the only time he's had success in December was against the Eagles, so you can't – God. I just hope that doesn't happen. And I don't – hope always leaves when reality walks in. But if Foles loses that game or if the Eagles don't win that game and then they somehow find a way to sneak into the playoffs and he loses that playoff game, or God forbid they lose 3 in a row, this city would turn on Foles faster than anything you've ever seen. Because there's so many people that are still on the fence. Would you say that again?
They turned on Santa Claus.
They booed Mike
You know what? Hold on. Let me defend some people here. Santa Claus was drunk. He had beer in his beard. He deserved to be booed and pelted. So he had that coming. You know, and there's a lot of worse things that other fan bases have done. I believe they had a murder in San Francisco not too long ago when the Raiders were in town for a preseason game.
It's supposed to be the city of brotherly love, though. Where did it all go?
Yeah.
I'm going to defend Kwame and Philadelphia here. My family grew up, my family was from right about Philadelphia in the Reading area. Kwame knows this. And Philadelphia gets a bad rap. They're just a really passionate sports city, much like Boston is. But they do turn on people. They turned on Michael Vick. They turned on Andy Reid. And so you can see that happening, Kwame, moving forward this year. If the Eagles lose their final 3 games or something, they'll turn on Foles and they'll want to go after a Taj Boyd or Johnny Manziel, really?
I think what would happen is, because you have so many people that are living in the moment, and at times when people always seem to relish the moment and forget the memory. So, you know, if Foles loses 3 games, or if they lose, then, you know, the fan base would, the people who didn't support Foles would say, we knew it all along, you were totally wrong. You know, and the people that would support Foles would say, I don't know. You know, prudence, being judicious is not a fan strong suit in any city. But when you talk about a city that's so starved for a winner, you know, you get the news that Roy Halladay is going to be retiring. You know, the Sixers are rebuilding. The Flyers are talking about being kicked out of Philly. You know, right now, Foles is the top of the town. So if he were to falter, it would be tough. You would get a lot of people that would want to see him out of here. And I want to go on record and saying no. It's not a game-by-game thing with me and Foles. I believe he's earned the right to go next season as the incumbent, and nothing should take that away. I don't care what he does henceforth. That 7-touchdown game for me on the heels of the Dallas game said to me, you know what, this kid, because I respect hard work and I respect the process, and he's earned that right. So I definitely would go with Foles. But I don't know, man. It's the city. The city is fickle. You know when you're losing. You know when all you get, you know what I mean, when you're getting cherry bell. You know what I mean? You can't get 3 cherries. Eventually you start going crazy. You start kicking the slot machines and you're yelling at old ladies. You know, you start getting a little bit irritable. And that could happen. That could definitely happen.
And look at Riley Cooper possibly, too. Okay, we talked about him in August when we had you on before.
You're going to keep asking me about this dude, aren't you?
Do you think, well, on one hand, he has played like number 2 wide receiver this year. He's been a really good receiver for Philadelphia and for Nick Foles, more than Michael Vick. Do you think there's a possibility that the city has forgiven him, or?
It depends on who you ask. You know, it's funny you say that. Let me speak personally, and this is something I've never said on my radio show, and this is something that I haven't put out publicly. Only those close to me, you know what I mean, know this. But when I don't cheer for him at all. When he catches a pass or he does something, you know, I wish it was somebody else. He doesn't represent the Philadelphia Eagles that I grew and loved, you know, and he doesn't represent Jeffrey Lurie. And so, you know, that's just me personally. But Mike Missinelli, who was our Michael Jordan at our station, he said the same thing, and I was shocked to hear him say it. He says he doesn't root for him. You know, he said that when he catches the ball, he wishes somebody else did. So, it depends on who you ask. There's a lot of people who want to forgive him. Shoot, there's a lot of people who patted him on the back and didn't see anything wrong with what he said. But to me, he got caught. And that's when he apologized. He got caught. And, you know, my history in life, you can't forgive or forget a guy that does those things. You can't. Because that's somebody that when the chips are down, they're going to bail on you. And I haven't had a chance to interview a lot of the Eagle players or any of the Eagle players for that matter. But there's only, you know, if I would ever get a real moment to sit down and talk to them, you know, that's one of the things I would ask them, because I don't think you can forgive that guy. But you have no choice because he's your brother on the team. You know, you have to ride with him to some extent. But at some point, you want to kick his ass out the car. And then you turn around and this dude is having a tremendous season because Deshaun is having a tremendous season. Teams go in, you can't just discount what he's doing. And then you look at the fact that LaShawn McCoy is having a tremendous season. So now you got to account for one of the top 5 running backs in the game, regardless of whether he's one. You know he's in the picture. He's one top 5, and you got to account for one of the premier playmakers in the game. And then, of course, this dude's going to get something. He should, but to somehow suggest, I just know. I think it depends on who you ask. I really do. To answer your question specifically,
I thought he was going to be knocked out of the season by week 4, at least.
No, I never thought that.
I thought guys would be hunting for his head, looking to take him out, and I'm surprised he survived.
They do. Riley gets into it, and to 14's credit, he's no chump. You know what I mean? And it's funny. Usually, most of the guys that do that and feel that brolic about themselves usually aren't. They usually think they're the baddest dudes in the building. Problem is, there's always somebody badder. You know what I mean? And if you remember against Kansas City, Sean Smith made him look like he didn't. Sean Smith made him look like he didn't even belong in the NFL.
And you talked about karma not having an expiration date. I'm kind of wondering when his comes and if it does.
Well, I think 14's karma will come in something completely different, and it'll come behind closed doors, because that's where that's where you learn, or that's where you know where his heart is. You know what I mean? It's easy when you get caught and the Eagles post-game report is a black man. You know what I mean? He had to, Comcast, which is one of the pillars in diversity. You know what I mean? Whether you're talking about gender or race, he had to make amends for that. Jeffrey Lurie is the only owner in the NFL's history to give $200 million contracts to 2 black quarterbacks, one of which was a convicted felon. So he had to make amends, but the Eagles had no idea how to handle this. So Riley comes out, he apologizes or whatever have you, and I don't even like referring to him by name, quite frankly, so I can say number 14. But when the camera's going, is he not? Am I supposed to believe he never says it again? LaShawn McCoy has gotten an argument on the field.
Or that's the first time he ever said it. Yeah, okay.
We know that wasn't the case. He can say whatever he wants to say, but I know what I heard, I know what I saw, and I know what I felt. And he was not a virgin using that word.
Not to race bait here before we let you go, Kwame. Do you think there's anything to him having success with a Caucasian quarterback and not with Michael Vick?
No, I think it's more to do with the fact that Vick is a guy who wasn't going to trust him to take a chance. And I think that more goes back to the fact that, if you remember, Vick gave him a chance against Tramon Williams in the Packers game. He was one-on-one coverage with Tramon Williams when the Eagles were driving to win the game, and Williams got the interception. And Cooper was the guy he threw to. So I think that, he's given Cooper an opportunity before, and Cooper has either got it intercepted or, he didn't come down. So I just think Vic wasn't willing to take those chances with him, where Riley is willing to take a chance with him. Nick is willing to take a chance with him. I don't think that it has anything to do with that. That's a little too simplistic, to say, okay, I got a Caucasian quarterback, I'm going to run a better route. I think that, Nick has given him more of an opportunity, and you want to give Nick credit for that. But also, you guys got, and I keep beating this here. You cannot discount that game turned around yesterday when Deshaun made an unbelievable catch in the end zone. That's when that game turned over. And then LaShawn makes some unbelievable runs. Then Riley Cooper starts making plays. Then 14 starts making plays. And when you expect a guy, when you go to, and this is a bad analogy, but I'm using it anyway, because I know I'm pressed against the break. You go to the Special Olympics. You're not expecting the dude to run a 10 flat 100, right? You're expecting him to be somewhere in the 20s. So if he runs a 12, you're like, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. When in the grand scheme of things, your expectations were so low that it wowed you. Your expectations weren't high for 14. So 3 catches is like, wow, this dude has really performed, when he really hasn't. If Jeremy Maclin had 3 catches, it'd be bloody murder. So I hope the Special Olympics analogy wasn't too risque for you. So I think you get the gist of what I'm saying.
No, not at all, Kwame. We really do appreciate you coming on here. Again, our first repeat guest on Football Debate Central Radio. Tell everybody where they can find you everywhere, man. You're a great follow. You're a great listen. So just pimp yourself.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me on, fellas. Anytime. You can check me out, like I said, every Sunday morning, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on 97.5 The Fanatic here in Philadelphia with my man Matt Lombardo. You can download the app and check us out. You can also read me at Jones Sports World and check out my television show, .com Sports TV. Listen, we will be coming to California soon once I get some money up, once I get the finances right, I should say. That'd be the proper jargon. The finances right, we're going to do some traveling, and I definitely would love to have you on and talk about some of your other co-hosts here when we go to their city. But thanks for having me on, fellas. It was a good way to get some of my Eagles frustrations off my chest before I go into the booth and have to put on the mask.
Awesome, Kwame. Thank you so much for coming on, dude.
All right, fellas.
Check out the official store of the Pro Football Central Radio Network at pfcshirts.com to get all your holiday shopping done and be the coolest kid on the block wearing your favorite show's official T-shirt. That's pfcshirts.com and get your swag on.
And welcome back to Football Debate Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. So, Ryan, Sunday's game between the 49ers and the Seahawks, in my opinion, the best rivalry in football. I don't even think it's in question. A lot of it was taken out of that game. The 49ers won, so the Seahawks were not able to clinch at Candlestick. That had to be the ultimate goal for the home team. What did you take out of this game for both teams?
First of all, I agree with you on the rivalry thing. I don't think any two teams in the NFL hate each other more than these two, and it might even bleed out into the fan base as well. As far as not clinching the division, we can more or less assume that the Seahawks are going to take the division at some point, considering what they got 3 games left, and how many games are they? They got a 2-game lead. So let's just give it to the Seahawks. 49ers are going to be a wild card, unless they don't shoot themselves in the foot these next 3 games, which it doesn't look like they're going to. My takeaway, I'm worried. I'm actually worried. I'm not sure that the best team won. They didn't. The Seahawks did not have Percy Harvin. Colin Kaepernick.
Not Harvin at all.
I know. And Colin Kaepernick is not looking like a guy who's going to be able to do what he did last year and take this team to the Super Bowl. I know that you totally disagree with me here, but
100% here. Kaepernick played well, and you can go off and say that set the bar too low for playing well. But listen, he's going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL. His wide receivers did not help him out at all, one iota, and he was able to lead them. I know Frank Gore had the long run, but he had the big third down.
Man, his wide receivers were helping him out, and he was overthrowing and making bad passes.
Crabtree doesn't think he helped him out. Crabtree said that he had to apologize to the fan base and to the team for his performance on Sunday. So if Michael Crabtree personally doesn't think he helped out Kaepernick, far be it from me to question that.
Well, Crabtree's being nice and it's more than just Crabtree. The entire receiving corps was doing their job, was doing a good job. There was open targets, and a lot of times, Kaepernick was not hitting his guys or seeing the guys that are open. He has struggled. I mean, some people, 49er fans who just have fallen in love with Kaepernick, and maybe even rightfully so to some degree, and myself included, from last year's success. It's hard for us to really just look and acknowledge the fact that Kaepernick either locks onto one target, and then if that guy
so far from the truth.
It's not. Watch film, and you will totally see this.
Watch film of the touchdowns against St. Louis. Both of his touchdown passes, he was on 3rd or 4th read.
So what I'm telling you is not that it never happens. Just like Colin Kaepernick does not break tackles. He's a great athlete. He's really fast. He's big, but the second a guy gets close to him, he's more likely than not going to go down. He's not like a Cam Newton or a Ben Roethlisberger.
Well, and that's a good thing.
Where he's able to fight off these guys and make big plays. And this is a guy who you would expect that from him. Okay, but aside from that, my point is that he is not adequate. He's not adequate. That doesn't mean he never. Yes,
17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
I'm not done. He's not adequate at reading going through his progressions. He can do it. He's capable, and he's shown that it's not consistent, and it's not up to par of where it needs to be. And that's making me worried more than anything else about the 49ers right now. I'm worried that Kaepernick's inability to adequately read read defenses and go through his progressions could shoot them in the foot in the postseason, or they might not win. And if they have to play Seattle in Seattle come playoff time.
Well, that's the biggest concern is, and listen, it seems like after that game, if you talk to people, the Seahawks won. And that is the biggest crap I've ever heard this whole season. You act like the Seahawks won because they played a close game in San Francisco. Richard Sherman goes out there and he indicated glorified practice for Seattle. And then
before the game,
he goes off. And then he goes off. That was before the game. Then after the game, he goes off on the 49ers beat writers and says, we expected to blow them out, but they got the benefit of a few calls tonight throughout the game, and that helps, especially on third down. We will see them again, and it will be a different result. And it seems that the media and fans are taking that. And Seattle played well. They played close to San Francisco. Listen, Jim Harbaugh's 4-2 against Pete Carroll. People don't realize that. Seattle has not won in San Francisco since Mike Singletary dropped his pants and kicked Bernie Davis off the sideline. No one's talking about that. No one. All they're talking about is, oh, well, there was bad calls, or Kaepernick didn't play well enough, or Seattle played good, it was a close game. Come on. You're 11-1 team. There's no moral victories in the NFL as 11-1 team. You went into the defending NFC champions home turf, and you lost. And now you're bitching about it after you lose because you can't handle a loss. The fan base, the organization, the players, from the head coach down. It's ridiculous.
And you're speaking to the Seattle fans. I'm
speaking to the fans. I'm speaking to the organization. I'm speaking to Pete Carroll and to Richard Sherman.
Right. And I agree with you that it seems to be like guys like Richard Sherman and maybe even other guys in that locker room are making excuses about that loss and not taking ownership for the fact that San Francisco played a tough, hard-fought game and beat them fair and square. And this isn't a refs loss for Seattle. The refs didn't win this game for the San Francisco 49ers. There was bad calls on both sides of the ball. It appears that Seattle's getting cocky enough to where they can actually underestimate the San Francisco 49ers, and that's dangerous on their part. They should never do that. The 49ers are not a team to be underestimated by anyone in the NFL. But at the same time, I would like to see a more efficient and productive offense. I'm glad that the running game got going and Frank Gore was able to make some nice runs and find some holes, and he ran really hard that game, and it was good to see that because that's been sort of a weakness over the last 3 weeks prior to this. But the passing game, you got your receivers back, you got all your targets. I want to see us, or the 49ers, make use of the targets. I want to see them getting the ball in these guys' hands and finding ways. Finding ways to be efficient, quick slants, screens, things of that nature. Get Kaepernick in a rhythm. And then when we talk about the sequencing of plays by Greg Roman, it seems to be lacking. It doesn't seem to be keeping defenses off balance. They're getting a little too predictable, run 3 times or throw the ball downfield or do play action. And play action causes Kaepernick to turn his head away from the defense, making him almost every single time you have a play action pass, Kaepernick is going to look at one target and then panic. And that's what I've noticed over this season. And you really got to maybe try some passes that aren't play action, try some quick stuff, some high percentage things, get this guy in a rhythm, get his confidence up, and then keep the defense off balance that way. Show early success.
Let me ask you this. All the microscope is on Kaepernick for the game, but what about Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson looked lost out there at times. The pressure was getting to him. He was not hitting his receivers. He missed 3 or 4 open receivers. He did not go through his second or third read, maybe because he didn't have the time, but everybody's talking about Kaepernick. What about Wilson? He did not play great football.
Right, and credit to the 49ers defense. They had a good game plan. They put a lot of pressure on Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson played himself out of any pseudo or realized MVP race that he might have been in. Is no longer.
It was pseudo,
right.
But that's neither here nor there. Listen, San Francisco's going to have to go into Seattle and win. I don't think anybody can be confident about that. The Seahawks are still the best team in the NFL. But the 49ers proved that they can go up against the best and win. They have not done that up to this point. Their wins have come against mediocre teams. Prior to this game, it was against one team with a winning record that currently has a winning record, and that's when Arizona was struggling. So this was a big win for that and for the morale of the team, knowing that they can go up against Seattle and win. Different story in January if it comes to the 49ers playing in the Pacific Northwest, because, as we know, that is the biggest home field advantage.
Let me ask you this. What's your impression of Greg Roman up to this point?
He should be fired after the year.
Wow, that's crazy because he was talked about as one of the highest sought-out candidates for a head coaching job not too long ago, and now can he even keep his offensive coordinator job?
No, he could have actually been fired a couple weeks back, and they could have gone with Gene Christ or somebody else. Maybe Harbaugh take over the majority of the play calling duties because he's not getting it done.
Do you know anything about that being talked about in the organization?
It's not being talked about in the organization. They love Greg Roman. Okay. So it's going to take a lot for him to be fired, but I think he should be fired after this season. You saw the difference between Darrell Bevell and the play calling for Seattle and the play calling for the 49ers. So it's a marked difference there, and that's coaching. And there was.
Let me ask you this about Seattle really quick before we move on. Did you see anything from that game that tells you that maybe the Seahawks are not the best team in the NFL?
Yeah, they lost. And they didn't know how to handle a loss. I think those are two things. There's a difference between being confident and cocky. They're bordering on being cocky. And like you said, you can't be cocky going up against a team as talented as the 49ers. Not just this game, against Jacksonville, against Carolina, and actually that's a good win now because of what Carolina's done recently.
I think what they did, and I think
St. Louis should have won that game against Seattle.
What they did against the Saints, it really, their heads exploded after that. And
that's a mirage.
Right.
That's a mirage. Period, because you have New Orleans as a dome stadium going into an environment in Seattle and playing like that. That's more a mirage or anything like that. You put them in a neutral site, and New Orleans will go to bat against Seattle. That team is not equipped to play in that environment.
But I'm not going to say it's a complete mirage. I think they had. You have to be impressed by the way that they were able to shut down.
There's a reason why I think Seattle's the best team in the NFL, and it did change because they lost on Sunday.
So you still believe it? Okay.
I still believe it, but you have an ability if you're San Francisco and even Carolina. I don't think New Orleans has it because going into Seattle is going to be tough for them. But those two teams, and heck, even Dallas going into Seattle, you have the ability to have an upset there. They're not the odds-on favorites, meaning I'm not going to put $150 out for them to win the NFC at this point.
And then, they're tied with Denver for the best record in the NFL. Denver's 11-2. Gonna switch gears on you a little bit. We have Wes Welker with another concussion. I'm curious about your opinion on whether or not the Broncos should shelve him for the rest of the season for his health reasons.
They should. When you're talking about the brain and the head, you're talking about protecting the shield, like Roger Goodell talks about ad nauseum. You need to take it seriously. He's had, 2 concussions or 2 head injuries in, 3 weeks? Right?
And I think he's had it's been an ongoing issue for him throughout his career as well. Numerous concussions.
And we knew it was going to be because of his size. We knew that was going to be something there. So it's, to me, just sit him. Maybe sit him until the playoffs. You're probably going to be playing in the divisional round, so you can sit him for 4 weeks. They need to do that.
We can pretty much assume he's not going to be back next week or probably even the week after that. He needs to get clearance. And I'm not sure how they actually determine whether or not a player is cleared to play post-concussion. I know they do the tests and see and pair it up against their baseline, but I guess they have to be completely clear of all symptoms, obviously.
They have to be symptom-free. And what they have to do here is, and this is important, they have to be symptom-free, but also in order to even get into the non-practice gear, or the non-contact gear in practice, they need to pass 1 battery test. Then to be cleared to practice, they need to pass the second one. and then to be cleared to play, they got to pass the third one. So we won't know probably until Friday or Saturday with Welker.
And I've always been fascinated with what was going on with Javed Best. I don't know if you guys all know who that is. He was, I think, a second-round draft pick for the Detroit Lions out of Cal, who had a very promising career and never really was able to take off because of concussions. And he had like a few concussions in the first year and a half of his career, and just he never ended up getting cleared to play again. And I was wondering if he was retaining those symptoms throughout that process, or if they were being extra cautious for some reason that I never know, and it was never disclosed. But unless something like that's going on with Wes Welker, and if he's just able to somehow go back to his norm, whatever that is, I'm all in favor of leaving the decision up to Wes Welker. And maybe that decision is made behind closed doors between a doctor and Wes Welker himself, so that
you don't leave
nobody
it up to the player, man.
Nobody calls him, has to call him a weakling or whatever. But I think you do leave it up to a player. Players, these are adults. They know they're playing a dangerous game, and if they're asymptomatic of any concussion or post-concussion symptoms, then what do we have left? We don't have any benchmark or anything to determine when's an okay time for him to resume his career. And so,
but if you leave it up to the player, Ryan, he's going to play 99 out of 100 times. And then that's their livelihood. That's who they are.
That's not true. I think it was first of all, Brandon Whedon. He could have not said anything about having a concussion. He played the entire game, not this weekend, but the weekend before. He played the entire game, finished it out, and then after the game was over, he's having those symptoms and went to the medical staff and told them about it. Then they shelved him. So it's not every player acts like that. This environment is a new environment in the NFL. People are much more cautious.
I would compare Brandon Whedon to Wes Welker when it comes to toughness.
No, but my point is, and Ben Roethlisberger did the same thing a few years back.
Ben Roethlisberger played with a separated shoulder, too.
And is a tough mofo, and yet he still sat himself out.
You just said mofo on the air.
Yes, and sat himself out with concussions, with concussion symptoms. I think guys are getting it to some degree nowadays, and I think as adults, knowing that they're playing a dangerous game, that they get to control their destiny to some degree, as long as all the normal things line up, medically speaking. So
knowing what I know about Wes Welker, he'll play no matter what.
I think that's his prerogative.
It's not his prerogative. It's not his prerogative when you have players suing the NFL afterwards. The NFL is liable here. Something happens to Wes Welker, he comes out there and he plays on Sunday, and something happens to him, long-term effects. The NFL is liable, so no.
They're not liable for allowing Wes Welker to play, knowing that if they tell him anybody that sued the NFL, he decides, if they advise against him playing and saying it's your prerogative, but we advise that you don't play because maybe there's more likelihood right now that you're going to get there's going to be a reoccurrence, they remove liability in that regard.
That's not going to happen. That's a pie-in-the-sky mentality. Thinking that, they remove liability. Yeah, maybe in their minds they do, but not in the minds of the general public, not in the minds of people who point to players that are dying in high school football. The NFL is under an extreme microscope here. And to indicate that, just because they said it's your prerogative and they recommend that he doesn't play, that will have some type of impact on the PR standpoint? No.
So what's the rule of thumb here? If you force Wes Welker out of the game and out of playing the remainder of the season.
He's not playing until he's cleared by the doctors. It's plain and simple. That's the way it is, and that's the way it needs to be, period.
I know, but how does a doctor clear him? That's what I'm saying. If he has no more... But I know, but what is it? So we both agree that if he has symptoms, he shouldn't play. I think we both agree that. And the doctor is not going to clear him. If he passes his baseline and he has no symptoms, why do you want to sit him? And if you do, for how long? And when do you bring him back? When do you determine it's okay, Wes Welker, you can now come back? When you're going to hurt his career? You're going to hurt his legacy that he's trying to establish, whatever goals he has in his life. And who are we to step in and tell Wes Welker he can't do something that he may want to do if everything else is cleared? That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you have concussion symptoms, Wes Welker. You looked ridiculous on your baseline test or your concussion test, But you know what? If you really want to play, go for it. I'm saying if everything pans out okay on the medical end, you should be allowed to play and resume playing with.
And I have no idea. And I have no idea how they come to that conclusion. I don't know how they came to that conclusion with Best. Any opinion here would just be conjecture on my point. I have no idea. But I very much doubt that Best was showing concussion symptoms. And if he was, that's really scary. We're talking a year after the fact.
Yeah,
so
and I think he might have been, actually.
And
Otherwise, wondering why they did that. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's a delicate subject matter.
Speaking of injuries, Tyrann Mathieu, who drew a lot of criticism for his actions, marijuana and drug use at LSU, was a third-round pick of the Arizona Cardinals back in April. One of the best defensive players, rookies, that is, in the NFL this year, towards ACL on Sunday.
Demon, yeah.
Horrible blow right there for Tyrann Mathieu and for a team that's looking to make the playoffs. And he's one of their immediate impact players. Patrick Peterson, who's a former teammate of Mathieu, took him under his wing, moved Mathieu into his house, tried to get him straight and settled, right? Mathieu went to rehab. He seems to be doing really well. My concern here, and again, this is conjecture, I have no idea about his personal situation, is do you think there's something to him maybe? I'm worried about him getting reliant on drugs again, whether they're painkillers or marijuana. He used marijuana because of his pain at LSU. A lot of people don't realize that. Am I looking too deep into it, Ryan?
No, and I think you actually bring up a great point. And one of the other concerns here is now he's going to be on IR. He's going to have no more his schedule's not going to be consumed with practice, meetings, and all those other things. He's just going to free time is just going to be his entire day. And what is he going to do with that? You know, he's at a high risk right now for falling back into some bad habits, especially if they're something he uses to taper off his pain. And I think that's a valid concern, and what the Cardinals do potentially to maybe keep him away from that, help him steer clear of that, if they provide support of any kind or keep players close to him, I don't know. But that's something to think about.
It is, and it worries me because he has turned his life around, and he's playing at a high level. And hopefully Patrick Peterson can continue to be that good influence in his life and change what's going on there. I feel bad for the kid. I feel bad when I see any of those injuries for anybody. It's not something you ever want to see in the NFL. Speaking of injuries, again, Rob Gronkowski towards ACL, and I think he tore his LCL.
Yeah, ACL.
Yeah, that guy cannot stay healthy.
And he's gonna be a bionic man by his 10th year in the league if he makes it that far. I mean, everything is just breaking: backs, elbows, knees, ankles, arms, forearms. Like he's gonna buzz off every time he walks through a metal detector.
He is, and you have to worry about him being able to stay healthy for a full 16 games. Now you're looking at a long rehab here because of the MCL too. So he probably won't be back until probably this time next year.
And I gotta wonder, as this starts mounting, it's not only taking a toll on his body, it's taking a toll on his mindset and how he plays the game, which has always been a very reckless mentality. And he could actually come back whenever that happens, maybe next year. Or he might be ready for week 1, who knows. But when he comes back, he might not be the same guy that we've become accustomed to. He might be damaged goods, not just from a physical standpoint, but mentally as well.
Mentally, yeah. You have to worry about the mental aspect of that, especially with going through rehab. I mean, now he's going to be going through rehab a total of what? I'm figuring this is a 10-month.
And it's exhausting. Rehab is an exhausting process, and it can be demoralizing for a player. And to keep having to do it over and over again, you start to wonder. You ask yourself these questions: Is my body conducive to playing football? And you start getting concerned about that, and then that can change the way you play the game. You get conservative.
And you have to worry about the Patriots too moving forward this year. How is Brady going to handle that? They pulled a miracle out of their behinds against Cleveland at home. That's not going to happen all the time.
Yeah.
They got lucky. That's not going to happen all the time. So you have to worry about them in the AFC. And then Gronkowski because of the contract too. So there's a lot of different teams going on there. This is the time of the year where injuries take place. Adrian Peterson was injured himself on Sunday. We don't know the extent of that injury. He was carted off the field.
But back to the Patriots thing really quick. You bring up a great point. We have seen what the Patriots are like without Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah.
And for them to have to go back to that existence is a sad, sad time for them, especially as we get nearer to when football matters the most. When they're going to need him the most, he's not going to be there. And they are not a viable team without Rob Gronkowski.
And the thing there is if they had Aaron Hernandez, and I don't want to get into football with him, but when they had those two tight ends on the field together, if they lost one for an extended period of time, Tom Brady was okay. Now they have nothing.
Nothing.
At tight end.
But, if history's taught us anything, you can't underestimate the Patriots.
Tom Brady. And Tom Brady, yeah.
There's always hope with Tom Brady and the Patriots, Bill Belichick and all those guys. They find a way, somehow, some way. It doesn't always look pretty, so don't count them out. But it's concerning nonetheless.
Let's go to commercial and come back and just talk about a couple of the coaching situations in the NFL before we wrap it up here on Football Debate Central Radio.
Hey everyone, check out TomahawkShades.com and get your lethally stylish pair of sunglasses. Great quality for a great price. Shades on, problems gone. TomahawkShades.com.
Welcome back to Football Debate Central Radio. We have been talking about Gary Kubiak for, it seems like, 10 years on this show. We had Jason Braddock on. We had a few other people on talking about the Houston Texans, where they stand. He was fired after their ridiculously horrible performance against Jacksonville on Thursday. It's a good move. I indicated he should have been fired a couple weeks ago. We were worried, Ryan, about maybe his health issues having an impact on what the Texans were going to do. Do you think this is still a good move for Houston?
Well, after losing to Jacksonville and given the talent on that roster, I can't defend Gary Kubiak's retaining Gary Kubiak at this point. I think it makes sense that they move on. He's been around for 8 years.
Yeah.
He's barely at a 500. I think he's under 500 now for his career win percentage. That's troublesome, and that's not something that you need to keep around for the Houston Texans. It's time for them to change directions. But you know what? Should they have just waited to the end of the season?
No.
What are the advantages of doing it now? Because they can get the search going? The coaching search can start now?
They can get the coaching search going. The teams that get knocked out before the divisional round, they can look at them. We talked about Roman, right? A lot of teams did not make a play for Roman because Fortnite got too deep into the playoffs the last couple of years. He's obviously not going to be a hot coaching candidate this year. But Darrell Bevell in Seattle, if they don't go to where they need to go, there's a lot of different coaches there. Carolina coaching staff has done a really good job. So there's a lot there. I personally liked Wade Phillips as coaching in Houston.
They seem to be leaning towards a guy with head coaching experience in the NFL, though.
They do.
So I don't know if they're going to go with the OC route unless that guy, whatever OC or DC, has been a head coach at one time.
And there are coordinators that have been head coaches. You look at Mike Zimmer in Cincinnati.
Let me ask you this: if Wade Phillips goes undefeated as interim, don't keep Wade Phillips as head coach.
It's a feel-good story. It's a feel-good story for him because obviously we know his father, Bum, coached for the Houston Oilers and is the toast of the town. So it's a feel-good story for Wade, and I feel good for him. But he's an interim coach at best.
Apparently Ed Reed didn't like him too much.
No, and he's going to be gone after this year too. He won't be back. The new coach is going to bring in their own. You're looking at Mike Zimmer in Cincinnati if you're looking at the head coaching route. And you're looking at the Steelers defense coordinator, name escapes me, Dick LeBeau, as a possibility there. If I'm Houston, I actually blow it up and go the college route. There's a lot of good candidates out there. David Shaw from Stanford is one that really jumps out to me as an option. But you can't lose 11 games in a row. Any team in the NFL can't lose 11 games in a row and their coach expect to be given a pass.
Especially when you have that kind of talent. It's just amazing that happens.
And you had multiple knowledgeable writers and experts that predict them to go to the Super Bowl. And you lose
and we actually had a couple of Houston writers on our show, and they seemed very confident that Gary Kubiak would be around next year. Not even that he would make the rest of the season, but they seemed confident that he would be around as the head coach next year.
Speaking of Wade Phillips, you're right. I liken the situation when the Cowboys played the Packers a few years back, and they got blown out on Monday Night Football. It was 45-10 in Dallas. And Jerry Jones does not like firing his coaches midseason. He doesn't do it. And he fired him the next day. I think the icing on the cake or whatever idiom you want to use was a Jaguar game. And losing like they did to a really bad football team.
Right.
And now you own the first pick in the draft 3 months after you were thought of as a conference favorite or a conference title contender. That's not going to get it done. And you can't use any excuse for that at all. Now, Mike Shanahan. Again, the Redskins just didn't even show up on Sunday against Kansas City. That was, 38-7?
The Redskins and the Redskins fans didn't show up.
Well, it was 38-7 with 11 minutes left in the second quarter, dude.
Yeah, and I saw a quote. I saw a quote by Tony Banks on Twitter. Yeah. That was essentially, you saw that said that Dan Snyder, talking to Dan Snyder is like talking to some random guy who has a fantasy football team. He has no clue about football or the NFL.
And we're gonna get Tony Banks on the show for next week, hopefully. Spoiler alert there, but I've been in communication with him. I want to get his opinion on that. I want to further dive into his mind, right? His mindset about that situation, because it's an interesting comment for someone that's a former player in the NFL to make about that.
But could that be something going on, that part of the dynamic between Shanahan and Snyder, and could he be unhappy in Washington, not liking the diva treatment Snyder's given to RG3, treating him like a superstar, getting his head blown up, making him less coachable? Has he made Shanahan's job more difficult?
Listen, RG3 saved our franchise last year, and it wasn't Mike Shanahan.
And they looked like they were getting along. I mean, I followed that team very closely, and I was doing an updated article each week about, coaches on the hot seat and whatnot, and assessing where they are. And all I could see time and time again was that these two guys seemed to really have a good rapport with each other. And for that to be completely 180 now, and here it is like that's the problem of why things are going wrong. It's throwing me off, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really throwing me off, but Snyder is one of those hands-on owners that shouldn't be hands-on. Jerry Jones comes to mind. Al Davis in his latter years, but overall Al Davis doesn't belong in that conversation at all. But the dynamic there is Mike Shanahan's indicated that he has not indicated that RG3 will be starting in Week 15. Mm-hmm. He did not go out saying that. If Mike Shanahan decides to start Kirk Cousins over RG3, and he makes that decision on Wednesday or Thursday, he will be fired that day. He will be fired the day that he announces Kirk Cousins starting over RG3. It won't happen. It won't happen. Daniel Snyder will be like, okay, that's good. Good for you. He'll fire him in the middle of the press conference. He'll pull Billy Martin, with AIDS, where they just fired him, 4 times in one day. I'm serious. Daniel Snyder will walk up to the podium and say, okay,
yeah, we're starting to, but it's interesting as you bring this drama up. It's feeling like RG3 almost has more power over the franchise than Mike Shanahan does at this point.
He should have more power over the franchise. He's their franchise quarterback, and they gave up how much to get him. He should have more power than Mike Shanahan. Mike Shanahan hasn't done anything. You listen to the press conferences, and you have Robert Griffin more or less making decisions for who's going to start next week. Oh, that's not an issue. I will be starting, essentially. However, when the same question was asked to Shanahan, he did not give a definitive answer and said, well, we're going to talk about later on in the week. And that's why you're bringing this up. Yeah. But that just goes that speaks to the undermining issue or the undermining that's going on here. Shanahan's sort of getting the controls and power swept out from under him, not by his owner and by his quarterback at this point on both fronts. He is, and that's a sign that someone's gone.
Yeah.
And I expected him to be fired on
this
Monday.
Morning.
This morning. I really did. And it hasn't happened yet. It probably will happen at some point soon. If he is still on the Redskins, this Redskins coach, next week, there's going to be so many issues there as it relates to the dynamic between him and RG3. Will he start Kirk Cousins? How are Daniel Snyder and Shanahan getting along? If Shanahan's fired, does his son take over? You can't possibly do that. They might not. They might have to.
Horrible. He shouldn't be in the NFL. He does not have what it takes.
And then their defense coordinator, his name escapes me, the former head coach of the St. Louis Rams. What's his name? Whatever. And New Orleans Saints. What's his name? The coordinator for the Hazlitt. Yeah. he's not going to come in and be an interim coach either. So they might have to hold on to Shanahan because they have no one to take over.
They have no interim. Yeah, well, that's a good point.
So, anyway, sorry, Brian. We are going to wrap up here on Football Debate Central Radio. Great guest. We really want to thank Orlando for coming on. That was great stuff about the Miami Dolphins. We also want to thank Kwame-Fisher Jones for coming on talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. And Ryan,
there's no shame in any who, by the way. It's okay.
There shouldn't be any shame in any who, but Bostonians apparently are not in favor of that comment.
Yeah, they're too busy going to the car.
The car, yeah, right? Far be it for a Bostonian to tell a Californian how to talk, right? But yeah. That's neither here nor there. We want to really thank everybody for coming on here. It's great stuff as always, and I'll catch you next week, Ryan.
And you as well.
You have been listening to an exclusive podcast on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. For news, blogs, and other awesome podcasts, please check out ProFootballCentral.com and follow us on Twitter at PF Central.